Hello everyone and welcome back to the Key Culture podcast. I am Niilo Tarnanen and I'm co-hosting the show with Matei Gheorghiu. Hello Matei.
Hi.
Today we are talking about multi-sensory music with our guest, composer and sound artist Tytti Arola. Welcome Tytti.
Thank you. Hi. Nice to be here.
So nice to have you here. Okay, so maybe we jump straight to the question of what actually is multi-sensory music. So, for example, Tytti, you employ not only sound but also smells in your music. Could you tell us a bit more of that? How did you come up with the idea?
Yeah, it started maybe 2013 or something like that. I got the idea, but then it actually took me many years to do anything about the idea. But it was I have a bit of like romantic story about like how it started for me. This is like a personal experience from. No, it's actually
Sounds interesting.
2011 is the correct year because
This is gonna get us many listeners.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, don't get now your hopes too high. But yeah, I'm from Turku, and that was the year 2011 was the year when there was this culture capital. Is it that?
The European cultural capital.
Yes, and Turku got it for 2011, and I was living back then, or probably not living but visiting Turku, and I was walking in a park one evening, going to my parents' home, and I saw this glowing sculpture in a park near the Doom Church of Turku.
The cathedral.
Yes, the Turku Cathedral. And there was this glowing sculpture, and the name was Hunajakenno. What is it in English? Honey, like where the bees make the kind of
Nest?
their home. Yeah, kind of bee nest.
Hive.
The like structure of the honey
Kind
with
of
the like
grid
nice
of it.
form.
Yeah.
Gritty structure.
Yeah.
So that was the name of the sculpture, and the artist was there still doing some final tweaking inside. It was a huge, like kind of a house, human-sized house for bees.
Wow.
And yeah, then I walked past it, and I was like smelling honey, in my opinion, because maybe the title of the sculpture combined with the looks and everything. And then I asked the artist, like, "Oh, does this smell of honey as well?" And then I think it was I don't remember the name of the artist, but then he was there some like with a hammer or something doing, and just like, "No, it does not smell like anything." And then I was like just a bit confused that why I had this kind of sensory confusion, and I was a bit sad that the artist kind of like degraded my like experience.
Yes.
Because I thought like, yeah, maybe not romantic in some ways, but somehow this evening walk and beautiful sculpture, and that was the experience. And then I started to think like, okay, actually smell or sense is quite interesting sensory thing, that why don't we utilize it more in art, especially in music, because that's my field, or sound. And yeah, then I started to think about like, yeah, it would be nice to make music that combines scents to sounds or music. And then it took me yeah, I did the first piece in 2014, and then so I was just dreaming about smell music for a couple of years before doing it actually.
So it took a couple of years to really kind of get the practical approach how to really do it, or was it just that you didn't kind of have the good opportunity to go with it? Or
it was more like the opportunity thing that I didn't have really. It was just an idea in my brain, and I didn't have any platform to put it out to. But then, then when the opportunity finally came, then it was of course a lot of thought. I had for a long time an idea of like a piece about people frying bacon on stage, because that is like, I think like that is such a strong smell that if you go somewhere where someone has been frying bacon, you can really feel it, in my opinion. So I was looking for smells that would be like strong, kind of from the both edges of kind of pleasant and unpleasant, or like, I don't know, bacon for some could be like, it's so greasy that it's a bit like when I make popcorn. I often like, when I'm waiting to eat the popcorn, the smell is wonderful, but then after eating the whole bucket, then you're like, oh, why does it still smell like this? So
I am a complete popcorn serial killer. I think I managed to burn every second popcorn bag I ever make. So I don't know if this is gonna go to the final cut, but I just felt like saying it. But I wanted to ask you, just because we're here, like, can you walk us a bit through the practicalities, like how do you actually do it in a performance? And I was also thinking, connected to this question, like, how do you make sure that the whole stage doesn't smell of bacon when the next piece comes?
Yeah, that's the tricky part, because in order to make the smell kind of be part of the piece, you need to kind of make it emerge in time, or that's how I've been seeing it. That if there would be a concert that you come to and that would be already smelling like something, then you can't really like connect to a certain piece, and probably not everyone wants their like music to smell like some certain smell. So yeah, the time is a kind of tricky thing, and then that if it's in a traditional concert setting, then there comes another performance, and how do you then like get rid of the smell? I did not do the bacon piece. I think that's one of the reasons that would be very just difficult to do, and but there is one or two pieces I've done with kind of this spatial infusing, or like that you try to really make the whole concert space smell like that. And one is actually about popcorn, so that is working with the similar like fatty stuff. And there we have 5 microwave ovens in the stage, and we're doing, I think it's 10 liters of popcorn, 10 bags. It's during the piece, it's like around 10 minutes piece. So yeah, and it's of course consumed by the audience after, and the performers after that, so we are not throwing the goods away. But so the popcorn piece is like getting the smell into the space, and it has been performed maybe 3 times, and then in a more traditional concert setting, I think it's been programmed to be maybe the last piece, so that then it's like that, then we can, or before some intermission, that it makes sense for the smell.
So that it doesn't affect to the next pieces.
Yeah, if I remember right, I think that has been the case. But then I had a kind of premiere of these pieces in 2016 at the Flow Festival, and there we were using 2 rooms, and we were like making the audience move from one place to like that. The middle piece was the popcorn piece, so that had it kind of like you can now go and fill the room with popcorn smell, like it doesn't affect and then the other smell pieces. But another piece like this is done with filter coffee machines, and that's a piece for percussionists and filter coffee machines. And the piece starts by the percussionist putting on the coffee machines, and then but that is quite mildish smell, especially in a big venue. So that has been always the question, like that. And it's always, as an artist, good to dream about these kind of pieces, and then when you tell the producers, I would need 12 filter coffee machines, and make sure you have like enough electricity for all of them. So there has been cases where once in Reykjavik in this Harpa concert hall, they were just like, don't plug the machines in yet. We need to make sure that there's enough electricity. So they of course require some power. But then a third mechanism has been, or no, kind of second mechanism has been that the audience members have kind of individual smell component that they can use during the piece. So I've used glass jars or envelopes to like put some smelling stuff there, and then we just need to instruct the audience that, hey, during the piece, when you feel like it, you can open the jar and smell the contents. Especially.
So in that case, it becomes kind of a ritual when
it is,
people are involved in it. And
and that's something I really loved in one performance of a piece where there's like birch and spruce leaves in a glass jar. So that's dealing with this scent of forest. And there became this kind of moment, because we didn't have for all the audience members an individual jar. So there was also the instruction like, please pass on the jar to your neighbor so that everyone can have a moment with the jar. So it actually was quite nice, this like a small activity within the audience members, that you're a bit also, because you're often looking there, but then you have to kind of connect with your fellow audience people. So ritual is a good way to describe it.
Yeah, I was actually thinking that that there seems to be a short segment of this rasva. I guess it's the popcorn piece. Yeah, in Vimeo. So maybe we could watch that and get some concrecy before we continue the discussion.
Yes.
Okay, so let's have a look to Tytti Arola's Rasva, one excerpt of this piece that involves popcorn and microwave ovens.
Rasva means fat in Finnish.
Yeah, and the performance is from Uuden musiikin Lokakuu, and it's performed by Tristero Piano Trio. Wow. So that was pretty hypnotic. So how was it actually done? I heard some sounds that sounded kind of pre-recorded sound of the instruments. Something sounded a bit like amplified happenings from the stage, from the machines and from the popcorn, and then some live probably and the live processing. So
Yeah.
how did you combine this, and how did you actually synchronize everything?
Well, it's all live, so there's nothing pre-recorded. So it's the only sound of the microwave ovens. And it's just like they are amplified in different ways. There are these kind of contact microphones, and then some, like in the kind of side of the microwave oven, there is this fan. So then there's like just the dynamic microphone getting those like fanny sounds. And so it's kind of like drone music, noise music in some degree. So it's meditative, just different kind of hums and then manipulating them live. This is actually like there are two performers in the stage who have a score of what to do at each time. So there's kind of timing of each oven is planned, and they are synchronizing with the and it's like the cooking time of microwave popcorn is around 3 minutes usually. So then they are always setting the timers to the right minutes to get the like popcorn out of them. Then there's a score also for the sound engineer. And actually in this performance it was Veli Kujala who was doing the electronics.
Interesting.
It's I would say this is the most important part, is the sound engineer's part, that how to manipulate the sounds. And I have suggestions and kind of ideas what to do, but there's quite a lot of room for improvisation as well in the manipulation. But kind of the general pieces, it starts acoustically and then it goes towards more crazy reverby spacey sounds. So to kind of recontextualize the machines as well, because some of the sounds are pretty ordinary, like we can recognize from our everyday life. So then the idea is a bit to recontextualize those sounds and those objects, that maybe they can turn into something magical.
Recontextualization, that's something we need to get back to. But just to make sure that the listeners know, so Veli Kujala, who got mentioned, is a Finnish composer and accordionist, very let's say successful in both of careers. Maybe because now we turned to the machines, and another element that you often employ in your music seems to be everyday objects, such as pieces of paper or microwave ovens, as here, or balloons or coffee machines. So you already talked about the recontextualization.
Yeah.
What a fancy word. So would you like to tell a bit more about that and the idea behind using the everyday objects as musical instruments?
Yeah.
Or what it means to you. I mean, it's perhaps a bit different to all of us, and I have also made some of that approach in my own music, but it would be really nice to hear what you personally think, what is inspiring to you.
Yeah. Well, I find like just daily life pretty inspiring as it is. I think when one starts to just pay attention to detail, maybe one could call it a bit like mindfulness, or what trendy ways of saying it, that you're kind of focusing on, like the hum of a machine at your home. That can be quite satisfying, at least to me. I don't know if it's to you too, for example, but I think this kind of, that is one thing, attention to detail. And then this, what I said, kind of trying to show that, this humble or maybe ordinary object can become more interesting if you kind of all of a sudden put it to a stage and give it kind of almost a personality, that this is you amplified in a concert space, that it kind of changes, I think, how we like look at the object, and I think that I find quite interesting. And then one practical matter is just I'm a musician myself, and I like to actually always when I compose, I really try to get my hands on the sounding object if I can. So I try a lot to mimic what I'm writing for others or writing for myself. So that's one aspect as well, that these everyday objects are actually pretty easy to get access to. So I like to make music that I hear the result already when I'm making it, and make decisions based on that. So
How about the audience? Do they react? How do you think they react in let's say the to this kind of music in the context of contemporary music at large, or you have your everyday string quartet and everyday piano piece, and do you think that you get a different reply from the audience than what other people do, or what do you think?
It's very difficult to know, like, kind of compare them, but maybe like with this mindset of taking something relatable like ordinary objects, that is something that I really like, that the audience has like a chance to really relate to the event and relate to the musician, maybe to the composer as well, that kind of that it is and it is kind of simple as well, which I think is great. I really like simple music as well, that it's that everyone could. No, I'm not saying that everyone could do it. Like, there's a reason why musicians go on the stage, but the kind of to be able to kind of step in to the shoes of the performer, perhaps. I think that using everyday objects gives that maybe enables it a bit better than maybe making kind of virtuosic material for a
So you're saying
instrument.
that, for example, if in the piece there's like, well, I'm just making it up now. So
Yeah.
if you have balloons and like, I don't know, cans and frying pans, that's going to relate to, let's say, people's everyday life compared to, let's say, a violin or a trombone.
It's impossible to say, but it's been something that I've been thinking about, that could be the case. But I guess everyone relates to what they find like. But at least it's very concrete and it's very transparent as well. That and I like also, when it comes to technology, I also like transparency, that it's kind of, there's not too much magic happening, or it can be magical, but it's kind of understandable magic.
I think I understand what you mean. So like so that it's that people understand what's going on.
Yeah, exactly. And that is some, like, my philosophy maybe in general, kind of a bigger goal as an artist would be to kind of make contemporary music perhaps more approachable for people also that don't have background in listening to contemporary music, that there is some, and of course, I love to work with like playfulness. So that's also one kind of tool to try to lure people to the concert. That like it's, you know, it's, yeah.
I started to think what you were earlier saying about the recontextualization and kind of how putting things in a different context kind of changed, if I got it right, kind of into what kind of details you're paying attention. And for example, when you take a coffee machine to the stage, you're maybe not anymore thinking it as same way, as a functional way as you would think as if you are just cooking coffee for your own, but maybe you are paying attention to those exact, maybe the sound and smell and things like this as an aesthetic experiences. And then on the other hand, I kind of see it going two ways around, because if this is combined with, let's say, ordinary acoustic instruments, you might get also kind of paying attention to kind of the everyday aspects of, let's say, a piano or a flute, that actually, well, this is a massive piece of wood, or this has some holes in it, or what would I do? And it, like, how do they in everyday life go to my hands, and what it is to be in some kind of position. So I don't know if this relates to what you are talking about, but kind of recontextualize the other elements that are in the same concert, because you start, but kind of the idea that you start seeing also these kind of physical or practical properties of the ordinary instruments that you might not pay attention if they are just kind of in the normal setting that everybody's used to.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. I maybe have not thought about that so much, but I think it certainly, like, probably is exactly like that. And then again, like, yeah, when you have also then like musicians treating the, like, yeah, maybe there's also like then when you start to think like who is playing the instruments, whether it's a grand piano or a saucepan, then it's also like there comes these kind of interesting questions about like the performer, I think.
I would a bit feel the need to go to the next question, but that I will connect to what you already said. So would you consider that what you're doing is any kind of conceptual art or not? Because, you know, what ordinary people think of modern art often is identified with conceptual art. I often see in Facebook comments about modern art, people saying like, is this banana on the wall that people eat, and that's not art, that's shit, you know. And like there's all these kind of references that I've heard of these pieces, and I know that, okay, this is conceptual art, but most people don't know, and they think that all modern art is the banana on the wall. And are you doing the banana on the wall or not? Because, and this comes my next point, because you already said that you want to make art more accessible to people, not more conceptual or more complicated. Approachable, yeah.
I don't know about the banana. Maybe I didn't get completely the banana on the wall. I know what the piece you're talking about. I do have a banana. But yeah, like, of course, my working processes are pretty conceptual, and I'm really idea driven. That I usually work with a concept. So, for example, in this microwave oven piece, or almost all these smell pieces, the smell has been the starting point. So I've been a bit more kind of that has been the goal of that piece. And yes, I will make some sounds there as well, because I will call it either a sound art or composition, or that and it's, I want to also, that was the goal, to put sound into it, but the like smell thing there was more in kind of the focus of the thing. But yeah,
See,
I don't know.
The thing, like what I was trying to get is like often, and now I'm making vast generalizations, but often conceptual art is like you're more interested in the idea than in the result. So if your idea is that you're gonna read, like John Cage, yeah, you're gonna have an organ piece that it's one page played for like I don't know how many hundreds of years. That's an idea, and it's cool idea, but it's not practical for the audience. I mean, no one's gonna hear that piece really. So that is in a way going away from the audience, and it's more interesting in the idea. But you want to be close to the audience.
Yeah, that's very important to me. And that's why I would say that the process is driven by concepts. But I think the end results, I actually aim for some kind of, yes, relatability. Yeah, I would say that the end result, I wouldn't say it's conceptual art in that sense, that I do pay a lot of attention to the, like, what's the result. It's not only the process, but the process is often conceptual.
Right.
I think we could, if we would like to, we could kind of just go on and think what actually conceptualizing means and so on. But I think a couple of new interesting things got mentioned here. So you referred yourself as both as a composer and sound artist. So what actually is the difference of these two, if there is a difference or the distinction? So what is it in your opinion, the difference between music and sound art?
Well, I think the like general view is that, or I'm using them like wrongly. Sorry about that. But I have like my own way of using the terms, which I think it's funny because maybe no one gets it, but I found my way. But I think the general way is like that actually sound artists are often coming more from the field of fine art, and they are fine artists working with sound. And composers are obviously more working with music and musical, like,
Sounds.
yeah. But I've like decided to just call myself sound artist because I feel that I see that as a general term that composer is like kind of a side note of. I would say that for me, calling myself sound artist means that I can easily be working like as a musician, a performer, and composing for others and making sound installations. So yeah, it is like a bit the different roles what I'm taking, but in my opinion, sound artist could like have all those professions in it. But then, of course, if I'm writing clearly for an ensemble, then I might use the term composer because that is actually that day and that like work has been done in that mindset.
So in some sense, it is dependent of the context that you're writing.
Yes.
It seems that you're doing at least like pieces for installations, pieces for concert. Then you have also done some film scores, some performances. So do you listen to the world around you differently when you are working with a project with a certain context, or is it so that you more or less have the same mindset in your artistic work, and then you just find your ways to realize it in the context of every work, whatever it is?
Yeah, I would say definitely the kind of second one. You said that I think I have a general like way of looking. I'm always interested in sounds. So like kind of, I think that's with many musicians or sound people that you don't kind of shut your ears whenever. And I don't have any different modes for different professions that now as a musician I look like these things into what I hear or listen. So yeah, I think the kind of where the end result is gonna go, like, yeah, or I would even say it's completely the same process, but it's just then if I do a sound installation or build an instrument, then I'm obviously doing just different stuff than if I'm writing for a choir, or the work itself is different, but the mindset is
The process
same.
is this. Okay, so the mindset is the same, but you also said that the process is kind of the same. So how is that actually possible if...
Yeah, it's maybe it's a bit contradictory now when I say it, but or I don't know, like, yeah, I think it's the just I don't change anything in me depending on like what I'm doing. It's I have the same principles, but yeah, I guess it's just impossible in life, or like as a human in general, to somehow act differently, like in certain situations. I don't know.
So just getting a bit back to the whole discussion about what is sound artist and composer and conceptual and non-conceptual and so on, could you like tell us in a couple of sentences what is, let's say, your composer philosophy, let's say, or like what are you've explained a lot, but I mean, like, if you could say it in a few sentences, what is the goal of the kind of music you're doing and what you're hoping to achieve?
Ooh, difficult question, but interesting. I'm like, what inspires me is daily life, and that's often what I examine in my works. I'm interested to kind of challenge the roles between a composer and performer and audience. That what are the relationships in between? And I think kind of with my works, also what we've discussed here, you might get what I mean a bit.
I would
Yeah.
still like to maybe ask a further question, like you already mentioned earlier kind of improvisation as one way of giving more freedom to the performers when we were talking about the sound processing in Rasva. But how otherwise, what are your practical ways of giving alternatives for the roles of composer and performer and audience?
Well, that improvising, I usually always try to leave some stuff in a more traditional score as well, undetermined, to be like planned by the performer, because I think the musicians are the experts in their field. So I find it sometimes difficult to come as kind of to say like, do this for me now. That like I like more to also like unleash them as musicians and see what comes out of there. Of course, like the or like I like the combination, maybe unleashing the musicians and then also me providing some material and then see what happens. I maybe haven't yet thought other methods than kind of improvisation and open structures of how to kind of leave more. Of course, dialogue during the process with the musicians is very important, and I always want to do that if it's possible.
Have you also been performing your own pieces? I mean, that would be one very obvious way of I mean, being also involved there as a performing musician.
Yeah, I am
together with the others.
Yeah, I am quite often doing that as well, and I like that also to perform. Like, and then you of course then have quite a lot of freedom being both the maker of the piece and performer of the piece.
I have an unfair follow-up question because it just came to my mind now. I think one criticism that I've often heard about more extra musical kinds of music, so more going to the conceptual area, is that you can just hide the fact that you, and I'm not no, I'm not talking about you, but like this is a general comment that I've heard often, that the composer can hide the fact that they don't have much to say, so then they do other jibber jabber stuff that kind of seems interesting. And what do you think a conceptual artist's art should be like so that it's good or meaningful? I sorry, this is a very unfair question, but
I don't know. Like I said myself, I don't.
For example, if you ask someone who goes to the composition department in Sibelius Academy and you ask them what is a good composer, they will tell you that they have to have a lot of skill in orchestration, in writing with notes, in making a good form, and so on. What should be the skills of someone who does the kind of music you're doing be?
Yeah, well, I think good ideas. I really like when there's some good thinking behind a piece. But then, I agree that even though you would have the greatest master plans behind a piece, but then the end result is somehow underwhelming or feels, like you said, like kind of gibberish, like some magic tricks on top, then it might not convey the good idea behind it. So I would say, but the most important thing is to have something to say, like some ideas that you need to do, and then to find ways to kind of actually convey that idea interestingly. And what is interesting, then that's a completely different
it's a complex question.
mountain.
No, but I totally agree with what you said. Like, because
Yeah.
I also think that there can definitely be great conceptual music, or very non-traditional music, but you still have to double it very much with talent and with taste and with knowledge of, for example, electronics or and the ideas have to be very good. And I guess you will find let's say, the path to do the meaningful art.
And I guess maybe one thing that Tytti mentioned earlier was the openness that I or the transparency of what you're doing, so that when you have a main point, so then just show it to people. I mean, one word, maybe this goes now too far from the original plan, but one word that I'm always a bit annoyed amongst the traditional composers is this kind of hidden constructions. I mean, like, not everybody is using them, of course, but I have always been thinking, like, what's the purpose of them? I mean, if they are hidden, who cares? If only the composer knows, or somebody who the composer has specifically told, what's the point? I mean,
By hidden
if we are about
constructions,
to
you mean? By hidden constructions?
whatever. But I mean, if we are about to communicate through music, so shouldn't we pay attention to stuff that really gets communicated via the sounding world, and perhaps the other senses that are present in the musical experience?
But this is one thing I'm sometimes criticizing, or I find confusing, and that's why maybe I'm often adding something else except music, because I think sometimes then the focus is only on the sound, and I think that's just a missed opportunity. That, hey, think about the stage, think about that's just, I really appreciate also music that only thinks about sound, and there's like a super interesting pieces and stuff, but I think there's plenty of room for other kinds of pieces as well, and I think there's a lot of missed opportunities how to make the performance a bit more interesting, or somehow engaging or whatever, like that. It's not just like note performer, and yeah.
I totally agree, and I think here we're also dealing with kind of the context where the music is going to be listened or seen, or because if you think of this kind of classical music concert setting, it's kind of one kind of context. Then on the other hand, if you're just listening something on your headphones, it's a totally different setting. Both give you opportunity to be focused to the music if you want, but the kind of the social construction there is otherwise very different. And I think one thing, at least for me as a composer, is kind of to think again, like what kind of music takes advantage of the possibilities of a certain performance context also. So of course, if we were speaking of something that is happening on the stage anyway, so then why not to use the stage also?
So you guys think that the stage is more like a living creature that is waiting to be explored? Let's put it like that.
No.
Well, I agree a bit with this. I think it's just, well, it's interesting because my path was not through like kind of traditional composition studies, so I don't know what do they teach you there. So I don't know if the stage is like considered often in the studies, or like, but I think that would be very interesting to think the whole context of the where it's gonna be. And yeah,
I wanted to both agree and disagree with what you both said earlier about the stage, because on one hand, I think there's place for everything. There's a place for a piece that has electronics and lights and stage and instrumental theater and interaction with audience. And there's also place for music that is just played with performer on stage and everybody claps at the end. And if I listen to a piece that is of the first type, so with lights and interaction and conceptual, it works so much better when you are actually at the concert. Whereas I can actually click a recording at home and listen to a piece for violin and piano wherever I am. So I think it's very hard to replicate the very stage-specific issues of a performance of a piece that has these very specific stage experiences.
yes, that I agree with this, and like I said, I think there's like definitely space for all kinds of music.
Yeah, I would have just liked to point out that, at least in my opinion, one thing that is really good in the stage specific, or let's say stage dependent music, is that you cannot take it out from the stage. So it's more special when you really have the experience. So, but as Matei say, every way of musical kind of types of pieces or musical context has their own strengths and weaknesses. I would be actually inclined to ask further from Tytti's statement as your composer ideology, because you are doing that, and then we just took one of those little things as a very big side note, which is a good thing probably. But let's continue if you have more to add.
Yeah, I don't know. I think we've covered quite many things that are kind of important to my philosophy already. Maybe it's not philosophy, but it's more like a approach or tool that I've also mentioned. But yeah, having fun sounds stupid, but like kind of I like to work with humor as well. So kind of that is something I like kind of consciously sometimes like to bring to concert, because I think there could be a bit more humor in concert music.
Well, I'm interested to ask, when you say that you consciously put it to the music, so is it more like you are waiting for opportunities, like, aha, now I'm going to put something fun here, or is it more that when you when something comes up which you feel that this is fun, so you then kind of just accept it and keep it instead of putting it away because if it's fun?
Well, I think it's more like I often think that it's like a general playfulness, maybe what I'm aiming at, and maybe like we talked about the stage, so I also quite often like to think that it's kind of I'm creating a playground for the performer to step in to, and then like there can be things happening in that playground, and yeah, that's the, like for example, I made a piece for string trio, like 2 violins and a viola, and they were using bows, and I had like planned a system to attach a paintbrush to their hand, so then they are like painting while they are like bowing.
So was the paper kind of below their elbows?
No, the paper was like in front of them, so then they were just like, there was a brush coming here, and like, yeah, so it's like, of course it's a completely stupid idea, but I was like insisting that there comes like paintings during the piece, and then I did it, and like that, yeah, I know it's stupid, but then those kind of things, I think it's good a bit to put some stupid and funny things as well.
Okay, so the stupid is for the funny, let's say, in this case.
Oh, I mean, like, it's just when you think about it, it's a bit ridiculous idea, but yeah.
I think ridiculous is often very good, because life is ridiculous, and if we kind of pretend that it's not,
Maybe your life, bro.
Your life not really, man. So
Let's not go there.
Let's not go there. Yeah. But I just means it's more honest to accept also the ridiculous aspects of the life and kind of show the beauty of them as part of the art.
No, but I think what you're saying is that the ridiculous part is not taken too seriously. So you're not doing something that's supposed to mean much more than it actually means. Did I get that right?
Can you say more what you mean?
So when you do, let's say, a stupid idea, like what you said, it's not because you want to show some amazing symbolism that nobody can think about, but it's mostly just to poke a bit, for fun.
It's both. It can be both. In this piece, I was actually like studying the kind of, I wanted to emphasize the movements of bow hand being kind of synchronized with just the kind of player synchronized, but also like the hands of a violinist needs to synchronize. So kind of bring the machine in the human. So yeah, in this case there was like a bigger idea behind it, but to kind of emphasize the movement and the kind of degrees of the movements, I decided to add this kind of element that would emphasize it, but then bring something a bit different.
Could the audience see the result of the painting?
Yes.
Oh. What's the name of the piece actually?
Synchrome.
Synchrome.
Also
okay.
In my.
Let's put it to the subtitles also.
Yes.
Yeah. You were referring to the education, and as it got mentioned, I would be actually interested to hear what the 2 degrees you have taught to you. You have studied in Sibelius Academy and then also in the School of the Arts and Design of the Aalto University. So how would you compare these 2 institutions, and what could they learn from each other, perhaps?
Yeah, that's a very beautiful question to ask, what institutions could learn from each other. Yeah, I was quite long in Sibelius Academy, 7 years. I know some are longer, but But
At least I was longer.
yeah, but compared to 2.5 in Aalto, I think that's feels such a short time after that. Yeah, there's plenty to learn, I think, from the other schools. Of course, I'm just been to two programs, so it's difficult to know from the point of view of the whole institution. But in Sibelius Academy, I was studying in the music education department. Great studies. I was very happy that I did that, and then I studied a bit of composition like in other schools than in Iceland, and Turku used to have also a composition school. Yeah, I would say that the kind of general thing I liked a lot in Sibelius Academy was it was really specializing in what you're doing, and then also I felt at least quite cared for as a student, and I think that's very valuable, that you feel that you have an institution that is like actually interested in you and somehow supports you in what you're doing. That was my experience in Sibelius Academy. What I would advise Sibelius Academy to kind of learn would be to open up also the horizon. It's good to focus and specialize, but maybe then it's a bit the art university hybrid. What is it called when they all merge together?
The fusion.
Academies. Yeah, the fusion
when the three academies became together to be the University of the Arts Helsinki at 2013.
Yeah, so I think there's so many possibilities there that I felt like at least while being student there was not maybe working so well with me. Maybe it works nowadays or for someone else. But this kind of the collaborations between the different academies, I think that should be something that could be developed. And in Aalto, I felt then that there was this kind of, I think it was called university-wide art studies, so that kind of courses that anyone could take from whether you were in design department or I was in the media department, so you could meet there, and those courses were very interesting. And I had one workshop where I was guided by a sculpture, and I thought that was very nice also to have a teacher that comes from a different discipline than yourself. But yeah, then again, this has the flip coin that then I was a bit confused sometimes at Aalto, that then again if you're having sound courses and then there comes photographers there, then you might not have the same language to talk about. So even though this kind of diversity is very good,
you can lose the focus.
Yeah, that I think it's good to have very specialized courses that here you can really dig deep, and then these more general courses where you can have this transdisciplinary approach. And yeah,
so
maybe
how to get the balance between these two?
Yeah, that's difficult.
It's a tricky question.
Yeah.
So, since you have written also film scores, I'm inclined to ask how you feel about it as a working environment. Do you think everything's possible in film music in terms of style, aesthetics, or expression? Or is there some tendency towards materials that are more familiar to the audience, calling for an instant, this is about this reaction? Why, and does this need to be so?
Yeah, well, when you're writing film music, you're always working as a team. So, or of course, as a composer, you're always alone, or not always, but often alone. I would say it's a bit tailoring mindset, or I've been taking that kind of mindset when working on film, that there is a certain scene that needs some kind of sounds or music that would And because the rule is kind of that the story is always the number one thing, so it can't be like that the sound can somehow comes too much in the foreground for that reason, because that's not the point of film music, to be the best sounding music. It's the best film music can be super in the shadows that no one even notices it, but it acts for the purpose of it, which is to like convey the story in the sense that the director kind of tells you. So in that way, that sense, that's one of the rare positions as a composer where you're kind of a employee, or I've been feeling that way, that you have a clear boss, or this has been my experience with directors, that there's clear wishes and instructions of what we are looking for. And by clear instructions, I don't know that I don't mean that they would tell you what to do, but there is something, usually somewhere where the story needs to start going towards that you're trying to then, with the sounds, like make happen. In that sense, then as a composer, you need to find the good way for you to interpret and produce what the director is looking for.
Yeah, especially because he probably doesn't know much music, actually, right? So
Well, it depends. I've been working with directors that like don't know anything about music, but then also like some music, one director I worked with was like a musician himself. So then kind of he had actually very clear ideas what it could be, and often directors work with this kind of reference music, so they might say that, hey, maybe something like
in
this.
Terminator, this part, or like in
like
Pirates
that
of the Caribbean, this part.
Yeah, or often it's some not film music at all, but like just some song that has some mood. But then to find out what from the reference song is the part, is it that it's played by a saxophone? Is it the thing that it's in a certain tempo? Is it the harmonic material, or that's the like interesting part then to figure out as a composer.
I can imagine. I was just thinking when you said that in film, the music is not supposed to take the attention away from the story. But is it so that kind of the visual elements are telling the story and music is just supporting it? Or could it sometimes be kind of the other way around, so that the music could actually be the active element in telling the story and the visuals kind of on the background? Just as a hypothetical question.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like of course the stories, because then there's like separately sound design. So that's the kind of like all the sounds from the world are then done by another person. So kind of they are trying to make the world as real and as like believable as possible, I would say, or then go against it if you're trying to alienate the viewer somehow, that this is somehow unreliable world. So then the role of music often, in my opinion, is to more do the underlying feelings or that kind of things. But then of course there's a lot of like directors like Sofia Coppola and Tarantino that like work completely differently with music, that they take songs and then they make kind of even music video like scenes where the music really is super on the front and kind of maybe cracks the actual world for few seconds or few minutes.
So actually there are really many opportunities if it's just up to the perhaps to the director to
it's about
decide what approach they take.
Yeah, that's the thing, and that's interesting and so different kind of composing when someone else is kind of being your boss and saying that you might end up doing like 20 demos of something and no it's not good yet, and then you just but it's very good. I think it's good to also get sometimes like this kind of completely different projects.
Maybe after that you won't feel so bad when you are your own boss, and after 20 trials of something you're still disappointed in what your result is.
Yeah.
In order to kind of wrap the whole wonderful discussion up, I would like to ask you, Tytti, if you could change some things about how the contemporary music scene or art scene works, what would it be? And you can think it financially or aesthetically or whatever, but something that you would like to change on the scene.
Or see more of, or
yeah, that's, I guess there would be so many things, but maybe based on this conversation, like I think this idea of that you can have fun in stage, and that like it's not, I don't know, that's something that I'm often like digging and maybe a bit missing as well. More experimental stuff also in bigger like institutions, like let's say symphony orchestras could like sometimes try a bit something experimental.
And
things.
With experimental you mean practically what? Because it could mean very many things.
That's true. I mean, maybe just like different kind of forms in like, yeah, how about if that stage would be also somehow treated a bit differently than the normal setting? That could be interesting.
So kind of how to use the stage as an active element also in orchestra.
Yeah, and to kind of like, again, thinking of the roles of the musician just as well, like would there be some possibilities of some experiment in that setting?
I've been actually also thinking about that, but it's somehow it seems to be amongst the concert music settings the kind of most hard one, the orchestra music, because there are so many people involved, and how to kind of get the whole pack together, and then all this put together with the fact that people are really familiar with certain ways of the production, so that they rehearse their parts, then they come there, and then they just do what the conductor shows, and then it goes
and
away.
they also have they also paid to play a certain amount of music, like if you have an orchestra that employs this amount of musicians, you should make sure that you use those musicians for the pieces, and so you cannot have 20 clarinets, but you have to have 3 or 4, or how many the orchestra has. So in the end you cannot experiment too much, and I think it's very hard to experiment with very many people at once.
But it's, for example, I read from, I think it was Turku Philharmonic Orchestra that had this kind of experiment that audience could walk in the orchestra, so they could actually hear how it sounds when you're in the, and I think they were probably playing just kind of a traditional repertoire, but the fact that the kind of stage was like deconstructed in some ways, that the audience could actually go there, I thought that was, for example, very sounded wonderful, and I wish I would have been there to experience how it was in, like, how did it function in reality.
I totally think there is something that you could develop based on this notion, because as I'm also a bassoonist, well, not active nowadays, but let's say a couple of years ago I was kind of semi-professional bassoonist, and you know, playing in an orchestra or even in a smaller ensemble that's actually a really social process. That if you're just an audience member or something like that, you cannot normally feel this social event as it is from the point of view of an ensemble player. And of course, the level of involvement and being together, breathing with your friends, your colleagues, and trying to blend with them, and all of this is not the same of just, you know, being an audience member who is walking there. But still, I think, you know, the idea of if these two kind of worlds are totally separated in the space, or if they are melted in the space, so that the experiences are somehow not shaded, but, you know, somehow mixed in a way, there is some interesting maybe to elaborate there.
I think so too.
Let's see what comes up.
Yes.
Yeah, I was gonna disagree with both of you. Maybe this doesn't go to the final cut. Let's see. I was gonna disagree a bit with both of you about the experimental versus traditional, but maybe it's gonna take another 1 hour of discussion. So maybe I don't say anything. So
I would be curious to know.
no, okay, fine. So then I guess, like, I'm the complete opposite. So I am someone who, at least throughout I did the normal composition studies, and I studied in Romania and in Finland. And one problem I often had was that I was forced to break boundaries. Like, for me, it was not easy to understand Boulez or even Messiaen or something like that. So I always felt that I'm against I have to learn how to taste things that are unfamiliar for me. And I think that I finally did it. But it wasn't easy, and I really enjoy writing with harmonies, that you can find depth between combining notes. I take composition more like of course, I'm trying to give something to the audience, but I also take it as some kind of ascetic trip for myself, you know, some kind of meditation that I do for myself. Like, I'm learning something about myself every time I compose. So every piece is like a small brick that I built on my, let's say, spiritual being. And I like to use interesting harmonies and interesting timbres, but in the same time also traditional chords. I like to use triads. I like to make tonal references. And I've often felt that other composers are going to be like, you really want to do that? Like, you put a minor major chord there. So I often felt that something like that is not very appreciated, that you have to do some avant-garde dissonant music. That's kind of where the depth is. Now I'm speaking in very simple terms. And then when I finally kind of get there, then I get to listen to guys like you who say, no, you plus all these people are in one category, and you all are doing the traditional stuff, and we need to mix it up with more like experimental things. And in my view, all this was experimental, and I was doing the traditional stuff. And I think there is value to everything. Like, if I'm perfectly honest, I think there is a place for modern dissonant music. There is place for modern less dissonant music. There is place for conceptual orchestral pieces, for conceptual ensemble pieces, for electronic with orchestra. Probably the most important thing is that it has meaning. It's giving something meaningful to the public and to the composer. Apart from that, what else can you do?
I totally agree, and I think that's the thing, that there is like room for all kinds of music. But I think, for example, in like symphony orchestra context, there is not room for experimental.
No, but I think
music.
it's because of practicality, I think.
Yeah, I understand it, but since there was a question like what would one want to
Of
like,
course.
so that's something that I think there would be room, you know, sometimes do something completely like, I'm not saying everything needs to be fireworks, but just go a bit to some unexpected way also there. I think it would be beneficial for the whole orchestra, like as a institution, to sometimes go to them.
Also, I think too. So I think that it's really important to pay attention to the practicalities, but still you can think the practicalities with, you know, quite many ways through, and you can, at least this is my, let's say, credo, that you can be both experimental and practical. Of course, it's hard, but I think it's worth of trying.
And maybe it's also a matter of comfort in the end, because imagine if you're an orchestra musician who has played violin they went to school and university since they were kids until adults, and they learned one way of doing things. And then you bring them another way of doing things. That might be fun, like if you're playing in an ensemble, but they might feel like they have to change their way of thinking. And maybe that's uncomfortable. You never know. I mean, this is just...
But it's good to go sometimes to those.
Absolutely.
Those as well.
But then imagine if you're
definitely
different. Imagine if you're different. If someone comes to you who are a conceptual artist and tells you that you should, or to me, you know, and tells me that I should now compose like Mozart or like Bach, that would be uncomfortable for me also. And I would say that, yeah, maybe I can do it once, but not too much, you know. So
I guess what we're dealing here with is mostly if people have the possibility to, you know, have their own voice or not. And much of what Matei say was about that you have felt some pressure to do stuff otherwise than you would have naturally like felt good for you. And perhaps this is question to everybody who's working on the field of music, whatever the genre, whatever the, you know, the context, is that do we need these kind of pressures that put us doing something that we wouldn't like to do in the first place? I mean, of course, it's always good to have open mind, but then again, if kind of the system forces you to do something that you actually are not okay with, so I think it's not a healthy situation.
Well, now that I went through the process, I can say that I think it's good that I got the open mind, but in the same time, I'm thinking that there could have been ways of opening those eyes in a way that would have made me feel more comfortable than it has. But I mean, it's not like it's somebody's fault. So I'm not going to start blaming my teachers for not knowing how to teach me. I think all of them try to do their best for that.
Let's do that in another episode. Okay. Let's see how much we edit that part, because
I think my messianic part worked quite nicely in the end. I think it was
well,
nice.
But at least I have to say this discussion has been really valuable, and I want to thank you, Tytti, of coming.
Thank you for inviting. This was a pleasure.
Yes.
Sure.
So this was this episode from the Key Culture podcast. My name was Niilo Tarnanen, and I was co-hosting this episode with Matei Gheorghiu. And if you want to know more about Tytti Arola, our guest today, check the links in the description, and share, like. I never can do it.
You never do it, you bro. Like.
Yeah, so you do it.
Like, share, and subscribe. And now the echo. Yeah.
Okay, you can do the echo. So yes. So have a nice day, everyone.
Have a nice day. Thank you.
Thank you.